In today's video, we're going to cover the proper technique for starting a router cut, specifically with profile or bearing-based bits. I've got a much longer video on router-based tips that includes this, but I wanted to separate this because I know a lot of people don't want to spend the time or don't have the time to watch longer videos. And I think this is one of the fundamental parts for beginners, people who just get a router. I know a lot of people are intimidated by the router. Fortunately, I was not. It's the circular saw for me. That one scares me. So we're going to walk through how you enter these cuts, how you do these cuts, and that will just help you keep safe and get better results. Let's begin with the basic operation of a router. When we put it in the router table, and don't worry, this is unplugged, we have this bit rotating counterclockwise. The router is upside down, and that is very important. All the cutters are facing in the same direction such that they engage counterclockwise. No matter where your wood is, you can use it on any side of this table because the cutting point is directly in the center. We have to be aware that counterclockwise is where we are engaging. The reason it's important to understand the direction of the router bit is because it tells us which way we need to engage with the router bit. We always want to feed into the cutter. Well, I say always, there's one rare exception, but 99.9% of the time we want to feed into the cutter like this. We can come from here, we can come from here. It doesn't matter. We always want to move what is essentially right to left. When we enter right to left, we are applying force into the bit as it is spinning towards us, and it gives us better control. If we enter the other way, this cutter is going to come along and it's going to want to grab and throw this forward. It's much harder to control. It's much easier to push than it is to kind of hold this back as it's going through the wrong way. The very first thing we need to do is give ourselves an advantage using our force against the router bit, and we do that by not taking a gigantic cut. If you want to take a gigantic cut, go buy a shaper. As a general rule of thumb, 1/8 of an inch, max 3/16 is what you want to deal with here, and if you want to take it in even smaller increments, that's going to be even safer. We're going to align ourselves at about 3/16 of an inch here, and we're going to walk through this before I show it actually being done. So when this turns on, it's going to be sitting again counterclockwise. You're going to want to have a way to hold the piece of wood, ideally with your hands up and away. Whether you make your own paddles, buy some paddles, whatever it is, something that allows your hand to be up and away, has grip on the bottom, and allows you to control the board both through and in is going to help. If you notice, I have both of these slanted a little bit so that I can apply forward pressure as well as guiding this through the router bit. When you're using a bearing bit, we eventually need to be up against the bearing. That doesn't mean you have to take it all up against the bearing at once. You can certainly move through and do a couple passes through this, but when you engage the bearing, it is much easier to control, which is why it's easier to take shallower cuts, lower it down, and then just directly engage the bearing. For those of you new to router tables, maybe you just got one, you will likely have seen this thing in the box. And this is a pin that slots into here and allows us to have another point of touching. This acts as a stabilizing point where we can come through here and we are able to brace ourselves up against this as we enter the wood. We're not trying to just freehand it. Over time, you'll likely get used to this enough that you won't need this, but it never hurts to use this. It's an extra safety tool. It allows you to brace better as you're coming in. Most importantly, it generally keeps you from accidentally entering in at a weird angle. You're naturally going to be more likely to go through rather than in like this. So our order of operations here is going to be set the bit height correct, somewhere between 1/8 and 3/16 maximum. Don't be afraid to take less. You can always do it in more passes. Second, if you are using a pin, you're going to want to put the pin in before you plug the router in. Third, you're going to want some kind of handles. I know some people just freehand it. That's okay. I don't love that. Fourth, we are going to want to determine the speed of our router bit. If the diameter is 1 inch or over, you will want to kick it down, usually from 6 to 5 or whatever the second speed is from the highest RPM. And as this begins spinning, we will just simply enter across and we will go in and we will look to engage with the bearing. But if we don't get it immediately, we can always come back and take a second pass. So it will look like this. Coming in, boom, I'm just going to ride through on that bearing. And then as we end up getting over here, we'll eventually be against the bearing here, though I can't touch it at this height. And when we disengage, we just want to make sure we don't tip in any more than necessary unless we are rounding or chamfering the other edges as well. And then we just pull away. So here's what that looks like in real time with the router on. Once we remove the pin, it becomes even more important to pay attention to how we are entering this because we no longer have any side support. What we are going to do actually is come in from a slight angle, and we're going to be looking to engage this leading edge just with the bearing, but not before it. We do not want to engage before, or else this will be smacking into that, and that's where you can lose control. You're most likely not going to if you have paddles on there and you're stabilized, but it is possible. So we will come in at, again, notice this kind of angle of this board. I'm aiming for the bearing with that tip, and then you can come through and adjust the angle however you want. In real time, it will look something like this. Let's say that you don't want to do just one corner. You want to come around to the other side. Well, how are we going to do that? There are two options here. One, we begin our first cut, and then we control it and move around the edge like so. Or two, we come in from the same way we did before. Now, I would warn on end grain, you can have a little bit of problematic tear out. So I certainly lean towards and making this whole cut first, coming through, making this whole cut, and then coming back, starting about here, and working my way around. Sometimes you will lose the contact with the bearing. That's okay. I always come back and re-enter. But if you want, you absolutely can come in this way. Here's how those look. Never, ever be afraid to pull out of a cut and reposition if you need to. It can get very awkward trying to twist yourself around, taking it all in one pass. You also can come in from anywhere on the side. If you're standing this way, you can still enter here. You don't always have to be perfectly here. If it's easier for you to make a cut from a slight angle, absolutely go ahead and do that. Just follow the same precautions of entering at that slight angle. So we touch and then come through. That's going to do it for us today. I wanted to keep this short because this is a very beginner skill, and I think people who are buying a router need to understand this before they go make their first cuts, and I don't want to bog you down with a bunch of other information. I did not cover the climb cut here, which you'll likely have heard of on different videos that you've watched. My longer router video covers that. I do not think that is a beginner skill, and I think you should have a lot more time having used the router before you really start to attempt that. It can go really wrong, so I didn't include that for that reason. I don't want to tempt people who aren't even yet into using a router or router table. Thanks for joining me today. Have a good one. Bye.